Greetings and welcome to Retention Chronicles, the podcast with learnings from expert e-commerce brands and partners. I'm Mariah Parsons.
And I'm Noah Rahim today. If you're here, you're either on a quest for e-commerce enlightenment or you accidentally clicked the wrong link. Either way, we're thrilled you've stumbled into our corner of the internet.
And hey, even if you're not on the e-commerce hype train, stick around. We promise it'll be worth your while. We've got pearls of wisdom for everyone, whether you're running a business or just trying to keep your houseplants alive.
Exactly. So before we unleash the brilliance of today's episode, let's give a shout out to our fantastic sponsor, Malomo.
They're the wizards behind the curtain, making the post-purchase experience smoother than a jazz solo.
Hit that subscribe button like it will increase LTV overnight, and check out our other episodes at gomalomo.com. That's GOMALOMO.com.
Get ready for insights, chuckles, and possibly a profound realization or two. Here's our newest episode of Retention Chronicles. Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to Retention Chronicles. Very, very, very excited for our guest here today. RC, great to have you. Like I said to you before we started recording, we had Tim from 1-800-D2C here in season 1. So very excited to get your take on what it's been like now running 1-800-D2C and explore more about your journey to get there. So if you could give us a short intro, that'd be great. I know our listeners are going to enjoy this one.
Totally. Thanks for having me. So I got into D2C about 4.5 years ago when I was in school. My mom and I started our own little family D2C brand called Rejuvia. And we've scaled that up over the last handful of years. And when we were doing so, we came across 1-800-D2C as this really cool platform of where you could go and see the other tools and apps that similar brands to you are using, and we used the platform to find new tools and stuff, and found it super valuable. So I reached out to Tim and I was like, "Hey, this is really cool. Congrats on building this. Would you ever consider letting me take the reins and run this thing full time?" So yeah, that's where we got to. I got to take over close to 3 months ago. And I guess the vision is like, there's this need in D2C where there's a zillion apps, a zillion tools, but there's not this one central platform, impartial platform where you can go and kind of read reviews, see actually what other brands use, why they use it, their stage, all of that. And I see the opportunity for 1-800-D2C to become an important platform for operators to build better tech stacks. So that's kind of the background, a little high level, and it's great to be here, chat about all things D2C.
Love it. Okay, so I knew you had your own brand. I didn't know you'd founded it with your mother. So I think that's awesome. And that's how you stumbled across 1-800-D2C, is actually using the platform itself. So I have so many questions that are going to be sparked from that. Mainly being, I forget how, I think it maybe was Tim reaching out from like a mutual Slack channel that we were in, where I first came across your platform, and I like instantly it struck me as such a smart idea, because like you said, there's a lot of different apps and tools and everything, and it can sometimes get noisy. So if you're founding a brand, then I imagine not knowing where to look first can be quite overwhelming. And so I kind of see it as like a platform where it's like the benefit of once you're in the space, you get to know like certain people and trust them, and like word of mouth, especially in the Shopify ecosystem, but all of e-commerce is very influential. And so I kind of see 1-800-D2C as like all the benefits that an influencer or a community has without any of the prejudice, I guess. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, 100%. That's where we see the value. Like when you're looking at a new tool and you like try to Google it or something, it's like all you get is sponsored articles, affiliate links trying to sell you on the tool, even though it might not be right for your business, might not be right for your stage, stuff like that. And overall, like it's great for the people making that content. It's not great for the operators. And as an operator myself, like we fell into that trap. Like we brought on a bunch of tools that weren't right for us, that weren't providing the value that we were sold. and we just see this need like for an impartial platform that can take everything into consideration about your brand and give you recommendations in a authentic, valuable way that can just help you build a better tech stack without trying to sell you new tools that maybe you don't need or maybe don't fit you. So yeah, basically building it from what we wish we had when we were building our V1 of our tech stack, and sharing that with other operators at a similar stage.
Mm-hmm. So because like obviously the platform you want to offer like the best opinion, the best unbiased opinion that you can, do you find you ever have to try and remove like personal opinion? Because now that we have like certain partners, right? Like I know partners that are in the same category, which if I was founding a brand, I would go with. And that's partially because partner teams, like I'm working with some more than others, partially just because I've seen their software. So do you find you struggle with that at all? Or is it really, is it quite easy to like, because you have to have, as a platform, an unbiased opinion, you don't
Yeah,
have to
I
struggle
think
with the personal.
the hardest thing is like, since we have our own brand, we have our own tech stack. So it's like, I always think I'm using the best tools, and like those are obviously the ones I want to recommend, but like that's not always true. And we're at a unique stage, and like our recommendation isn't going to be relevant to everyone, but it's always hard not to recommend our own tech stack. But we do a pretty good job of like trying to take everyone's needs into consideration, seeing their category, their stage, their revenue, their different channels, all of that, and just making recommendations based on the brand, not based on what we use, what we want to sell, all of that. So yeah, it can get pretty hard. It's like, especially when you use a tool every single day, and get into the platform every day and kind of fall in love with the tool. It's hard not to recommend that every chance you get, but like, not every tool is for every brand. And I think it took us a few months to learn that. But once you get that down, it's the impartiality is not too hard to play into once you structure the business around it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also wanted to ask you before diving into more of the learnings you've had, both on the brand side and through, I guess, would you say like consultancy side, like with 1-800 D2C?
Yeah, there's one kind of like one arm to the business is like the platform. So you can go on, you can look at the brand's profiles, see their tech stack, see what they use, why they use it, kind of get information about where they are in the journey. And then the other side is we have a agency consulting type of thing where smaller merchants who are either just starting or need a tech stack reconfiguration, like they can essentially hire us as like a outsourced CTO, and we'll act as a consultant, implementation manager, all of that to help them build what we think are the best tech stacks in the world.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. For the podcast sake, I'll say like consultancy and the brand side, and kind of rope those two arms of 1-800 D2C together. But do you find it's difficult to try and stay on top, like with new apps emerging, with like everyone's product updates and everything? Do you find it's difficult to try and stay on top of all these updates for these all these platforms that you are hosting on 1-800 D2C?
I think finding new tools is we're in the lucky position when there's a new tool, they usually come to us, or somehow we get the inbound and kind of get in the loop pretty early on. So we're lucky with that. And it's fun. Like it's really cool to discover new tools, new founders building things that bring value to brands. Like that's really a cool part of the job. The other thing you mentioned, discovering new features and new products within products, that's very hard. Like feels like every tool is becoming a platform, and in a platform there's 4 to 5 different products, and keeping up with that and making sure our hundreds of listings are updated with the latest info, that's super hard. It's very manual right now. But it's what we signed up to do, and it's fun. Just hard to keep up with it.
Yeah. So this is a tangent, but I just from Netflix Drive to Survive, like F1. I don't know if you're a fan of F1 at all. But my sister, mother, and I have recently become very big fans. And on one of their podcasts, the the principal of Red Bull was talking about how like the field every couple of years, the race cars will like all look really similar because they'll just follow the top leader, right? And then they'll diversify because like something changes in the ecosystem or like regulations, whatever. And what you were just saying about like different platforms having different parts and kind of taking like the seeing what the market needs and then solving for all of them. The tools, I think, also go through similar waves where they some become super similar and it's like fine tuning, right? To see like how those platforms are different, and then something else can shake up the entire ecosystem, and then you have all these different tools that are wildly different now when you look like between 1 to 3 years, right? So it makes sense to me that it would be very difficult to stay on top of all the different platforms, all the different updates, and keep your platform and the people you're serving as well up to date.
Yeah, totally. I think what we've seen is like just naturally in the ecom tech, it's like a few years ago, everyone had their really incredible point solution. Like you had a reviews tool, you had an analytics tool, you had a post-purchase communication tool, all of that. And then as D2C kind of evolved, these tools, like they had the really high volume of brands using them, but they realized the brands wanted more. So they launched new products, and ultimately it kind of evolves into, at least where I see it going is like, instead of having 50 apps on your Shopify store, in a few years, you're going to have 5. And those 5 is going to be like one for analytics, one for communication with your customers, one for fulfillment, one for inventory. And they're all just going to really be big platforms that serve pretty much every need you have in there. I think that's pretty exciting and cool. And as a merchant, it brings us a lot of value when we don't have to log into 50 apps to do 50 different things. But for 1-800 D2C's sake, it's a little bit, it's quite taxing to keep on top of it.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, we're seeing that on the Malomo side as well, just trying to always optimize for having people not having people, or not having brand operators, I should say, have to log into multiple different platforms. So I know like our Gorgeous integration, our Loop integration, a big thing that we focus on is like you can have all of that information streamlined so that you don't have to have all these different logins and all that stuff.
Totally.
Okay, so from now both the perspectives of operating a brand and operating 1-800 D2C, I would love to know, one of the things we're also focusing on at Malomo is trying to see, or just trying to observe, where everyone in this space goes to learn new things. Like, who are you following? Who motivates you or inspires you? Are there certain resources or newsletters or podcasts or whatever it is that you're checking up on daily to stay on top of the new tools and updates best you can? Or is it really just, is there no like method to the madness, I guess?
I think the main one is going to be Twitter. I like following people that are actually doing the work and like actually in the operator role, like pulling the strings every day. I think that's where most of the insights and super valuable little tidbits and tactics come out of. So whether they share that through organic social, Twitter, LinkedIn, or through a newsletter, or their podcasts, like whoever's in the, it's going to sound cheesy, but in the arena, that's where most of the value comes from. I think podcast wise, I listen to Limited Supply. That's the main one with Nick and Moyes. And then newsletter wise, just pretty much every different creator's newsletter I'll glance at. Some of my favorites are Nick's again, and then Cody, CMO at Jones Road. I think he is really good operator and good marketer. And being a young guy, he's taught me a lot that I've known today. So very appreciative of that. And then just staying up to date with the brand and the text tool stuff. There's another platform, CPG Directory. They do a really good job of just, their newsletter is good at just highlighting all of the new, mostly CPG D2C brands. And kind of like the agencies and partners behind it and how they helped build the brands. So I look to them to kind of stay in the loop to see who's building cool things on the brand side. And then the tech tool side, hopefully I am the one filling the gap. Um, if we're not talking about new tools and kind of new platforms, it's mostly organic Twitter and pretty much anything else that comes via like newsletter, LinkedIn, stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I haven't heard of the CPGD directory newsletter, so I'll have to check it out. Chris from CrossNet, Chris Mead as well. I don't know if you subscribe to his newsletter, but I always recommend it if I don't hear it. Yeah, yeah, it's a great one. Okay, so thank you for sharing the resources. How could you like explain, I guess, the learnings of learning how to operate a DTC brand? Like, when you and your mother first started, did you have any background with like entrepreneurship or anything of the sort? And then where did you like what lessons have you learned, I guess, along the way that you think might be missed if someone isn't actually running their a brand full time?
The biggest one we've learned is like just get into the mix and try and build and iterate as you go. I think if we look back on when we started like 4 years ago, we'd be really embarrassed about what we were trying to do. We didn't even know what Facebook ads were. We didn't know what like email marketing, all of that. And we just kind of built this Shopify site, threw up the products that my mom had worked with a manufacturer to develop, and kind of just hope that somehow people would discover them and buy them. And I guess like for the first year or so, we were doing really weird tactics. Like we were like Instagram messaging people to buy our products, all of that. And just every day we kind of just tried new things and kind of sniffed out where the traction was coming. And then we kind of follow that lead and iterate, try something else new. And then eventually we discovered how the typical D2C machine works. And then once we got into that mix, it took about a year to hammer out the messaging and kind of our funnels and growth. But it really all just came from like actually doing the work, getting in the mix, building and iterating, and basically just being super persistent, knowing that like nothing's impossible unless you quit. And we just had the mindset like, this is going to work. We're never going to quit. And we have a good product that people use, get value from, and we just need to figure out how to distribute it. And that just came from effort and iteration.
I like that. I admire that determination as well. Of as long as you stick with it, you can learn and grow from there. I'm glad you brought up paid media as well as email marketing, because obviously with Malomo, email marketing is pretty prevalent because transactional emails. But let's talk about paid media first, because there's obviously a big conversation around acquisition versus retention, and we're always tuning into retention. So curious to hear your opinion on the value of it, like how it's changed in the 4 years that you've been in the space. Yeah, what's your thoughts on like the values? Does it change by industry? Does it change by type of product that you have? All that stuff.
It definitely changes by category and everything like that. I think I can mainly speak to our category. So when we first started out, we were looking to acquire just purchases from Facebook. Like we just wanted people to buy our product profitably on the first purchase, and that would make us really happy, and we could grow the business against that. I think as we've gotten a little bit smarter and more in depth, we want to acquire customers. And the way you do that is by being really thoughtful about your messaging, your media, kind of how you're acquiring these actual customers, and kind of the journey you have from day 0 to day 60. Like how do you convert them from their first purchase when they're really a trialist to actually their second and third purchase when they're really a customer. So I think it goes hand in hand, acquisition and retention. Like we're always looking to acquire customers who are going to be with us for the rest of their life because we have a product that solves something they need. And I think retention wise, like 95% of it, it's going to be your product. Like if your product sucks or it doesn't solve a problem for them, or they don't need it, or it's just an impulse purchase that they never actually try to build into their daily lifestyle, they're probably not going to come back and buy again because you sent a pretty email. But if you acquire the right customer with the right message for the right problem, and you have a really good customer journey through your emails, SMS, all of that, I think that's how you can build, and that's how we built retention into our acquisition. But that's going to be different for every brand and every category. That's what we've learned. Like the biggest message is like there's a difference between the customers that buy the first time and buy the second time. And we just want to get more customers that buy twice. Even though that sounds super obvious and simple, it changes a lot with how you're thinking about acquisition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. We hear it. It's one of those things that you hear, but it's easy to forget about or easy to maybe sweep under the rug of. I'd imagine the first purchase is super exciting, especially in the earlier stages where you're just, like you said, you're acquiring for the purchase rather than the customer. And I think that's a great way of putting it, of trying to get that lifetime buy-in or long-term buy-in. And I realized that I, of course, know about Rejuvia, but at the top of the episode, I should have made you tell us a little bit more so the audience knows. Can you give us a brief summary about the products that you all sell?
Oh yeah, totally. So the easiest way to think about it is we're health and wellness, mostly sleep focused. So we took like your classic sleep supplement, like a melatonin gummy or capsule, and we turned it into a better for you, more convenient oral spray. So instead of chewing down a calorie dense sugary gummy before bed, you spray a all natural sleep inducing solution under your tongue. More convenient, better for you, absorbs by your body a bit quicker. And yeah, that's Rejuvia. So we have two hero products, our sleep spray and our stress spray. We sell them direct to consumer through our Shopify site. And yeah.
Okay, love it. Thank you. Yeah, I got too excited at the top of the episode to just dive right in. So usually I would have something of that nature at the top, but I think it's very interesting that you all like trying to, I guess, solve the issue that so many people face of having issues with sleep, but like looking at it in a different lens, instead of like taking a gummy or taking a vitamin. Just like revolutionizing the space. So I love working in D2C because it's so interesting to see how people look at the same problem and then solve it a couple of different ways or many different ways. But okay, so I now want to talk about how, say a brand comes to you, they're either pre-launch or just starting out. Can you kind of walk us through like how you're helping a brand grow? Like what is table stakes for a tech stack? What are you saying? Like you need to figure out whatever platform it is. What problems are you trying to solve for first?
I think early on, what you need is enough tech that somebody can buy from your site and you can communicate with them. So really that's a store, you need probably reviews, and you need email marketing, and that's pretty much it. And we don't really think these early stage brands should be loading up on 20, 25 apps just to get out of the gate with a bunch of tech bloat. So we just try to get a good idea of like their category, what platforms are best suited for that, what platforms other brands in their category used. Kind of like we can go back and see if brand X is 2 years ahead of them in the same category, we can go back and see what they used at the start and make similar recommendations and kind of get their feedback as well and kind of what they recommend. But yeah, just starting with their like a really lean, slim foundation, but that's really built strong so that when they're ready to grow and add more tech, it integrates easily. It's hopefully not a zillion apps that just get complicated, get a lot of bloat, but puts them in a really strong foundation to build a nice brand.
Okay, love it. How does that, if at all, differ from say like a scaling brand? Would you just be recommending like what's like the next stage, I guess, of tech that you'd be adding on top of like those table stakes?
Yeah, so our brands are usually, they come to us for like the total tech stack configuration. It's like when they're just starting and they just have their first Shopify store, but they have no tech on top of it. So we work more closely with those brands. And then closer to the higher end of the market, it's more like when they're deciding between two solutions and they want our input on like what they've seen other brands of a similar size use, why they use it, stuff like that, versus like a total tech stack reconfiguration. Because once you're 4 to 5 years in, it's pretty hard to overhaul everything, and you're probably in a pretty good groove. And there's probably no need to make big changes, but it's always good to kind of get third-party impartial opinions when you're adding new tools, because as you and I both know, once a tool gets into your stack, it's a little bit, they dig their claws in pretty deep, and it's hard to move in and out with tools.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely no. I can imagine, yeah, once you have something, unless it's really not working, then just the overhaul to like move all your stuff over. We of course work with a lot, like very closely in the Klaviyo platform, or at least our customer success managers. And so I know like overhauling to between platforms is just it's a beast to try and do, especially if you don't have like depending on your resources, if you don't have a big team to help you or an agency or any of that, that can be, I think, a big deterrent for a lot of people. So I think I can imagine that there's a big barrier of entry in that, or maybe not even barrier of entry is the right words, but there's a hesitancy to like choose the wrong platform. I don't know if you see that at all, of like someone like a brand operator wants to get it right so that they don't have to overhaul and get used to a whole new platform, say a couple of years down the road. So do you see that ever, of like a hesitancy to choose because a brand doesn't want to make the wrong decision? Or is it pretty much once they have all the information that you all are supplying with when they're looking at like, say, a couple different or two different tech solutions, that it's pretty clear to them which one will be best suited?
Yeah, it's probably the latter. We do see it a little bit more like when they're onboarding a new platform or trying to consolidate their tech stacks. That's when the process is a little bit, rightly so, drawn out and more thoughtful, and making sure they get it right, but more importantly, making sure they don't get it wrong. Because once you're using a platform for 4 different things, that gets pretty ingrained in your business and in your customer communications, and it's really hard to flip that. So we do work with a lot of brands that their emphasis is like, we want to get it right and we want to make sure we have the right solution, but we don't want to get it wrong, so that in 6 months down the road, we're overhauling a lot of things that we interact with our customers on with the daily basis.
Yeah, makes sense. So question as well, when you're, say, consulting for a bigger brand that is looking at, let's just call it two different solutions, do you find that they're looking at other competitors, like their competitors in the space of like their tech stack that they're using a lot? Like, is it more often than not that they're saying like, okay, this is my like top competitor, top competitive brand, like let's see what they're using and I want to use that as well? Or is it pretty internal, like when a brand is making those decisions?
If they're coming through us, they definitely, kind of how the platform is built, they'll definitely see the brands that are using, or their competitors, what tools they use. But what we see is that the brands actually want to use other tools than what their competitors use. It's more of like the mindset of like, oh, if our competitor is using this, why would we use the same thing? Why don't we go a different route and try to create some edge against them? But yeah, they definitely, at least what we've seen in the brands we work with, which are usually on the smaller end, it's definitely a consideration point, seeing the competitors' tech stacks and the history of it.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't think that it would be per se like, let's do something different and use this technology because our competitor is using the other one. So I'm glad to hear. I always love when we stumble across things that I don't expect. Okay, so I also want to talk about like when you're, I guess, so like data and analytics, I feel like with privacy changes and all that, nothing new, but it's still shaking up a lot of people's approaches to different things. How have you seen, like, has that in your conversations, has that become a bigger priority? Has it always been a priority? Has there been any change with those privacy updates? Because I think you sit at a very like a different perspective from the guests that we have on this podcast typically. So I definitely want to get your opinion on it.
I think right off the bat, there was definitely like right when those changes hit in iOS 14 release, like that's when the biggest mess occurred. And that's where some of these like third-party tools and attribution systems, that's when they really caught traction with a lot of brands. But I think if you gave Meta and TikTok a few years to evolve and kind of get around those changes, they've done a really good job about it. And I think for us specifically, like we don't use any of those. Like we rely solely on Meta. Like it's been pretty good data. It's not 100%. It's good directional data. And like using a third party attribution tool isn't 100% what we need. But it's definitely needed. Like when you add in multiple channels and you have media running everywhere, like having a third party tool to give you like another perspective on it and different ways to consider your data and analyze it, it's useful. I think from 1-800-D2C's perspective, those are the tools that have the highest like the highest usage. Like that's the number one category, is like people are always looking for different ways to analyze their data, different ways to look at LTV and CAC and stuff like that, and different incrementality softwares and how channels interact with one another. I think what we're seeing is the platforms get really, really smart with it and really involved with how they look at the data. So you don't need 4 different things to look at your LTV, your media, your email. It's kind of all consolidating into one. And then in that platform, you can manipulate and look at data however you want. And that's been, I think, I can't speak to how Tim saw it, but I'd imagine when he first started, it wasn't a super hot category. Like everyone would rely on Shopify and Facebook, and if they had a BI tool that would do the job. But now you probably have a third party analytics tool that kind of is your home for your data, and that's a super popular category.
Yeah. I also know too with of course with looking at data and like attribution windows within software platforms is a I've heard through either this podcast or other conversations I've had, is always a maybe point of contention or something that a lot of SaaS providers have to be aware of, because depending on how big different attribution windows are in different platforms, it can tell different stories, right? So if you're looking across, I don't know, 5 different apps in your tech stack, versus maybe a third party platform, it might be confusing because you're seeing different stories. I also, and it makes sense that it has popped up more as the privacy changes developed, but I feel like AI is kind of like everyone I think would agree, like AI is this new wave of maybe worry, maybe curiosity. Have you seen a lot of AI apps pop up now, like trying to, I guess, go with that wave the same way that like there was worry about privacy changes and looking and like losing access to customer information and analytics?
Yeah, totally. There's pretty much every high usage tool is starting to in some way or the other launch AI features, but 2 like tools built on the wave that I think are pretty cool are Sienna AI. It's like the customer service AI platform tool, and then there's another one, Rep AI, which is pretty cool. It's basically like a personal shopping concierge tool. Kind of think of it as like your gorgeous little chat widget, but like you kind of interact with it, and it's as if you had a personal shopper. Like it asks you, hey, what do you like, what are you looking for, all of that, and it kind of guides you to the right product if you're on a store with multiple SKUs, stuff like that. So I think those are really cool. I like the Sienna one a lot because I think there are a lot of, at least for a small growing brand like us with 2 people, where I'm still mostly doing a lot of the CX, I think having like a tool that can take a lot of it off your plate, but still deliver an incredible and like well above the line customer experience is really cool, and make it super efficient. I really like that trend. I haven't actually used the tool, so I can't speak to its efficacy, but the idea of it is cool. What else do I see in AI? Those are kind of it. Those are 2 newer tools that are getting a lot of traction, and I think have pretty serious use cases.
Okay, I'll have to check out the rep.ai tool. I haven't come across that one yet, but I have seen the Sienna tool, and not from having used it either. It does look like it would solve a pretty big pain point, especially for smaller teams. Okay, I do know too AI, just because we're joining a webinar with customer, which by the time this episode airs, will have been done. But it's all about like CX and AI and how they combine. And I don't know who it is from Sienna is joining, but someone is joining. So I've also come across just hearing about what they're going to talk about, and it's in 2 weeks time from now. So I'm excited for that. Okay, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about the under the hood episodes or interviews that you all do at 1-800-DDC. So first, can you give us like a summary so our audience is aware about what the under the hood interviews are all about, why you all started them, etc.
Yeah, so Under the Hood is we basically interview via 1-800-DC some of the cool, unique, and prevalent founders in our community, just to kind of get their story, their growth, kind of new tactics or unique things they've done to get to this point, and just share the learnings with our community. Like a lot of people love to learn from other founders. Like it's personally where I get most of my learnings is just like people that are 3 to 4 years ahead of me. Like they have the most to teach to me because they've done it before and they know how things go. So we can kind of dig those learnings out in a nicely done, awesome article interview format and share them with our community. I think it's super, super value add, and we can help a lot of operators who are a few years before them. So yeah, that's what we do. We try to do 2 to 3 per month. Try to mix it up with a lot of different brands and different categories. So we just had on Courtney, the founder of Nori. It's how to think about Nori. It's like your iron for your clothes, but in a hair straightener format. It's a really cool product, and she had a really good story. They are a really sizable business and have basically 2 people behind it and are growing super quickly. We had on Steph from Cadence recently, which I'm sure you're aware of. They're a really awesome product brand, similar to Nori, in the fact that they're super lean, good story, innovative, disruptive product. And we have
we had her on. I had her on the podcast, which was awesome.
I unfortunately didn't get to do that interview. One of our
bummer
writers did, but I got to edit it, and it was
that's like you're already there, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah. I will say editing. Wait, another tangent. Do you like editing, like post production? Because it's my least favorite part about the podcast. So I'm always just you don't.
Good. I think I have like 3 in the pipeline that have been in the pipeline for months, just because
There
I don't edit them. But once you get into it and it's a good story, it makes it go pretty quickly. But just the thought of having to go through a big Google Doc, it's not for me.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. I do know, I think maybe it was an ad or something, but the Nori brand, like a while ago. And I actually have it on my Christmas list, so that's fun. But that's awesome that you get to chat with founders. Same, I would probably say the same thing here, with our founder side of the branch, or our brand side of the branch, of getting brand side of the podcast. Oh my God. Getting to chat with different people and learnings. So has there been anything consistently across the different Under the Hood episodes that you've been able to either be a part of or to edit, that always seems to stick out? Like one example for me is founders just kind of having to like stumble through it in the early days of just try some things out. I forget the exact words that you use, but just like getting skin in the game. Is there anything that you've personally taken from the founders that is a consistent pattern between, these different industries, these different leaders in the space?
Yeah, there's probably 2, and I think I've touched on them a bit already, but the one is pretty much every really good story starts out with their obsession over their product, and it's usually something that they struggled with or dealt with or came up with on their own, and it was such a big issue for them that they wanted to bring something to the world that solved it and that they could personally be a customer of. And that's kind of where all the stories start, is like I had this issue and I really loved the idea of solving it. So I kind of dedicated X amount of years to my life to bring a product to life and putting my all into it. And then hand in hand with that is like every story of a successful founder, there's no way they could get there without persistence. Like Every story I hear is like the first 3 years or 2 years were really, really hard, but like we just had it in the back of our mind that the brand is going to work. We invested so much into the product, it has a real need, and that we're going to make it work no matter what it takes. And I think if you read every Under the Hood, you would get that too. It's like all these founders are super persistent, really hardworking people that never would quit even when things get hard, and they always had the mindset to kind of ingrain that in their team, and that's why these brands are so successful today. And that those are the two main ones. It varies by category and brand and product a bunch, but if you were to synthesize all couple hundred on our site, those are probably the two traits you get.
We can use some AI to do that. We don't have to do that anymore. Synthesize it all. Okay, love it. One last question before I wrap us up. Do you see any emerging patterns with what brands are trying to solve for, like this quarter or next year? Are you seeing, any consistencies across industries, across different different size of businesses that is like, okay, still trying to solve this problem?
For the brands that we work pretty closely with, it's always like we want to lean up our operations so that if the economy turns sour, the consumer went on a downward trend for a bit, like we can survive. Our default is alive. And that's things like your tech stack, of course, but just getting acquisition more efficient, like tightening the strings on retention, all of that, and making sure that's into place. So making sure your business is super tight and lean and efficient, all of that. And the other one is the obvious, like people want to solve for growth. Like if you're in D2C, the point of being in D2C, at least in my opinion, is to grow. It doesn't have to be month over month, but it sucks putting up a quarter of bad growth or a year of bad growth. So anything you can do to solve for growth, whether it's just more media or more just more ad spend, stuff like that, that's always of interest to the brands we work with, and just trying to solve the growth equation.
Yep. Something I would expect. Yeah. Growth always seems to be top of mind, of course, as it should be, especially in the earlier days. But I am going to wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining. This has been an absolute pleasure. I love picking anyone's brain, but especially those in the e-commerce space, because I think it's a very fast-paced moving industry, but there's also a ton of people who are very willing, like yourself, to take the time, share your learnings, kind of put it first in that, hopefully from the people you've taken learnings from, they're doing the same thing as you all are sitting here doing and sharing with us on this podcast. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you for having me. It was great to chat.